The night before my wedding, my sister stole my dress and engagement ring, then left a note saying she ran off to Paris with my fiancé. But she never made it, she went to a casino. I married in tablecloths as she paraded around the parking lot. After 30 years of stealing, the family finally cut her off. Some people say their wedding day was the best day of their lives. Mine was the day I finally buried my sister, not with a eulogy, but with a silent, searing truth. It was the day I chose my future over a lifetime of her toxic chaos, and it nearly cost me everything. Growing up, Eliza was the sun, dazzling, confident, and utterly ruthless. And I was just her shadow, constantly battling an anxiety so severe my hands would shake just tying my shoes. While I was frozen by panic, she was learning to weaponize our parents' sympathy. During my worst moments, she'd sneak into my room, taking whatever she wanted. First it was a prize toy, then my allowance money. Later it morphed into something much crueler, whispering to any boy I liked that I was too mentally unstable to date. Our parents, bless their hearts, always fell for her crocodile tears, dismissing my trembling protests as just my anxiety. By the time I became a pediatric nurse, I was desperate for any scrap of sisterly affection. So when Eliza came to me, mascara streaming down her face, claiming her boss had sexually harassed her and she'd quit, begging for $2,000 for rent, I handed it over without a second thought. That was just the beginning. The emergencies never stopped. Every month brought a new crisis. Burst pipes, stolen cars, sudden medical procedures. Over 2 years I gave her nearly $30,000, draining my life savings while she posted glamorous vacation photos on Instagram. The final gut-wrenching straw came at Dad's funeral. I stood at the podium, my voice thick with grief, choking through his favorite poem. Eliza wasn't even in the church. She'd used my eulogy as a diversion, racing to Dad's empty house with a locksmith. By the time I arrived, she'd already plundered everything valuable, and was actually attempting to forge my signature on his $400,000 life insurance documents. When I caught her red-handed, she just shrugged. "You're too anxious to handle money anyway," she said, as if it was a kindness. That was it. I called the police, changed my locks, and swore I'd never speak to her again. 3 blissful years passed. My anxiety medication dropped from its maximum dosage to almost nothing. I met Dominic, a software engineer who held my hand through therapy sessions and never, not once, used my mental health against me. On my 30th birthday, he proposed. It was perfect. Then on Christmas Eve, Eliza reappeared at my door. She was gaunt, mascara streaked down her face, claiming to be in recovery for gambling addiction, making amends as part of her 12-step program. She looked so desperate, so unlike the golden child who'd terrorized me for decades. Against every screaming instinct, I let her in. She seemed genuinely changed. She got a job at CVS, attended GA meetings religiously, and never ever asked for money. We started with coffee, then weekly dinners. She even helped with wedding planning, using her old manipulation skills for good, negotiating vendor prices down like a pro. But I noticed things. How her eyes would linger on my engagement ring. Her sudden, pointed questions about Dominic's salary. A strange interest in our honeymoon plans. Still, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. When she suggested a sister sleepover in my honeymoon suite the night before the wedding, I caved. We drank champagne, looked through childhood photos, and she apologized for everything. For the first time in decades, I felt like I finally had a sister. I woke at dawn. She was gone. My wedding dress? Gone. My engagement ring pulled right off my finger while I slept? Gone. The safe with $30,000 in cash gifts from the rehearsal dinner? Emptied. But the note she left? That was worse than any theft. Consider this my wedding gift. Your fiancé and I leave for Paris tonight. He says, I kiss better than you ever did. Thanks for introducing us. A primal scream tore from my throat, bringing hotel security running. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only race to Dominic's room 3 floors down. I pounded on his door until he answered, disheveled, confused. Through hyperventilating sobs, I shoved the note at him. His face went white, then crimson with fury. He swore he'd never touched her, that she'd tried to seduce him at the rehearsal dinner, but he'd rejected her. But how could I know what was true anymore? Eliza had stolen my ability to trust along with everything else. I can't believe you'd even question this, Dominic said, his voice cracking, wounded. After everything we've been through, you think I'd betray you with her? He sat on the bed, head in his hands. Maybe we should postpone the wedding. Not because I don't love you, but because you need to decide what matters more. Hunting down Eliza or trusting me. I'll support whatever you choose, but I won't marry someone who thinks I'm capable of this. The wedding was supposed to start in 6 hours. 200 guests were arriving. And Eliza? She was probably halfway to the airport with my entire future in her suitcase. Part of me knew she planted that note precisely to create this chaos. One final manipulation to destroy the happiness she could never steal. But knowing her game didn't make the choice any easier. I stood frozen in the hotel room, staring at Dominic's wounded expression. My hands trembled violently as I clutched Eliza's note. The familiar vice grip of anxiety tightened my chest. 6 hours. And my sister had orchestrated the perfect destruction. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Dominic. Security footage from 4 a.m. shows Eliza leaving alone. She loaded multiple bags into a car. No one else with her. The relief lasted mere seconds before it was replaced by pure, blazing rage. I stormed back to Dominic's room, my hotel robe billowing behind me. He opened the door before I could knock. I pushed past him. Empty it, I demanded, pointing at his suitcase. Show me everything. Your passport, your wallet, everything. Dominic stepped back, letting me tear through his belongings. His passport lay there untouched. But underneath I found printed boarding passes to Paris. My heart stopped. See? I waved them at him, my voice tight. Paris tickets, just like she said. Those are for our honeymoon upgrade, Dominic explained quietly. I wanted to surprise you with first-class seats. Check the dates. They're for tomorrow night, not today. Before I could respond, Maya, my bridesmaid, burst through the door, still in her pajamas. Her face was pale. You need to see this. She thrust her phone at me. There was Eliza, posing in the terminal, wearing my wedding dress, the custom-made ivory gown with hand-sewn pearls. The caption read, "Some brides run from the altar. I run to it." With a Paris location tag. My legs gave out. I sank onto the bed, Maya's phone slipping from my numb fingers. Dominic knelt beside me while Maya paced frantically. She knew, I whispered, staring at the screen. She knew exactly where we were going. I forced myself to think clearly. Racing to the airport meant abandoning our wedding. Trusting Dominic meant letting Eliza escape. I grabbed my phone and dialed the airline. An automated voice cheerfully greeted me. After navigating endless menus, I finally reached the international flights department. Your estimated wait time is 47 minutes. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I put it on speaker. That's when my mother arrived. She took one look at the scene, me in a bathrobe, Dominic on his knees, Maya looking stricken, and her face crumpled. I handed her Eliza's note. No, she breathed, then louder, angrier. What did you do to drive her away again? The accusation hit me like a physical blow. My chest constricted. Breathing became impossible. The room tilted. My first panic attack in over a year. Through a blur of tears, I spotted something behind the nightstand. A laminated CVS name badge with Eliza's photo. I grabbed it, trying to focus on the details. The badge looked wrong. The font was off. The CVS logo slightly distorted. This was fake. Eliza had never worked at CVS. Dominic reached for the badge to examine it closer, but the lamination caught on his ring and tore. Stop! I screamed. You're destroying evidence. My mother jumped, her phone flying from her hand. It hit the floor, somehow triggering a call. We all froze as we heard ringing, then a familiar voice. Hello, Mom. Eliza. The phone had called Eliza. My mother scrambled for it, but we could hear Eliza's voice growing concerned. Mom, I hear crying. Is everything okay? Maya grabbed the phone and ended the call. We sat in stunned silence for 3 minutes before my phone chimed. A text from Eliza. That badge was for my recovery roleplay therapy. You never did understand mental health treatment. Attached was a photo. Me mid-panic attack from 2 years ago, face contorted, hands shaking. She's trying to get better, my mother said softly, reading over my shoulder. At least she's making an effort with therapy. Maya made a disgusted sound. She blocked me right after I viewed her airport post. She blocked me on everything. I forced myself to breathe slowly, pushing down the panic. We need that security footage. The hotel manager met us in the security office. On the monitors, we watched Eliza make 5 trips to her car between 3:47 and 4:23 a.m. She carried my dress bag, multiple suitcases, and on the final trip, the safe itself. The timestamp proved she acted completely alone. In the last clip, she stopped at the hotel entrance, kissed her hand, and blew it directly at the camera. She knew exactly where the cameras were, the manager observed. We returned to find Alex, Dominic's groomsman, waiting in the hallway. I need to tell you something about last night, he said. Eliza cornered me at the rehearsal dinner. She kept asking about Dominic's ex-girlfriends, whether he'd ever cheated. I thought she was just making conversation, but now... My mother interrupted. We shouldn't ruin Eliza's fresh start in Paris by involving the police. This is just a sisterly prank. Your anxiety is making you overreact. Maya, still scrolling on her phone, gasped. Found something. She showed me old Facebook messages where I'd told her about Dominic's romantic Paris proposal plans. Eliza had liked and commented. So jealous. The timestamp showed she'd screenshotted them 3 months ago. Another notification. Eliza had posted in our family group chat. I had to flee for my safety. Talk about sibling rivalry reaching new heights. Stealing the wedding dress and the engagement ring while the bride's sleeping takes some serious dedication to being the worst sister ever. Attached were photos of scratches on her arms. Those are from her cat, I said numbly. She got a kitten last month. My phone rang. The wedding coordinator's panicked voice filled the room. 3 vendors just called. Their final payments bounced. Your account seems to be empty. They want cash immediately or they're leaving. $30,000 gone, plus whatever else she'd managed to drain. Uncle Jeff, my mother's brother and a retired cop, arrived as I processed this latest blow. He examined Eliza's note with professional detachment. Handwriting doesn't matter without proof of theft, he said. This looks like sisters being sisters. Remember when Eliza had that misunderstanding at the mall? I helped smooth that over. This is probably similar. A misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Was that what they called theft now? I made a decision. I'm calling the church about her GA meetings. The church secretary answered on the 3rd ring. I explained I was checking meeting times for my sister who'd relapsed. Gamblers Anonymous? She asked, confused. We haven't hosted GA meetings in 2 years, but I do remember someone named Eliza. She kept asking about our donation lockbox procedures. Made me uncomfortable. The fake recovery story. 3 months of lies. 12-step workbook she probably printed offline. Manufactured tears about making amends. All of it false. At the venue, my bridesmaids were trying to salvage the situation. 3 of them called me over to the honeymoon suite. Look at this, one said, pointing to the safe instructions taped inside the closet. This is Eliza's handwriting. She volunteered to test it during planning, remember? I looked closer. The combination she'd suggested was 15-30-45. My anxiety medication dosage. Everything clicked. Her questions about my finances hadn't been casual. Each one corresponded to a security question for my accounts. Mother's maiden name. First pet. Elementary school. She'd been gathering information for months. Sarah, Dominic's sister, pulled me aside. I work at Bank of America, she whispered. Eliza came to my branch last week. She was asking about joint account procedures. Said it was for after your wedding. I thought it was weird but didn't want to cause drama. Could you check if she tried anything? I asked. Sarah bit her lip. I shouldn't, but yeah, for Dominic. He doesn't deserve this. Maya, still glued to her phone, suddenly gasped. Look at Eliza's new Instagram story. The video showed a Parisian cafe. Eliza sipping coffee in my wedding dress, but Maya zoomed in on the menu board visible in the background. The prices were in dollars, not euros. She's not in Paris, Maya said. She's still here. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin. Why is Eliza at the casino asking to borrow money for an emergency flight? The casino was 20 minutes away. Eliza's elaborate Paris story was crumbling. She'd never even made it to the airport. Eliza sent another text with photos from our childhood. Each image had been annotated with bitter commentary. A birthday party where I'd gotten extra attention due to an anxiety attack had arrows pointing to my parents comforting me while she stood alone in the background. My childhood diary pages, stolen years ago, were photographed with private entries about my fears highlighted in yellow. The final photo showed me at age 12, mid-panic attack at a school play with the caption, "Always the center of attention." I recognized this pattern immediately. Before stealing from Dad's funeral, she'd sent similar messages claiming she'd been overlooked her whole life. Before every major theft, she positioned herself as the victim. The venue's valet attendant approached our group hesitantly. He mentioned seeing Eliza in the parking lot at 3 a.m. talking to someone in a car. The person had handed her something through the window. His description made my blood run cold. The person wore a white medical coat similar to the ones at CVS. I called my therapist, Dr. Kim, hoping she might have insights into Eliza's behavior. Dr. Kim's voice was strained when she answered. She revealed that someone claiming to be my medical emergency contact had called her office repeatedly, trying to access my session notes. The caller had known specific details about my treatment history that only family would know. My hands, steady for the first time all morning, began screenshotting every text, post, and contradiction from Eliza. The timeline revealed itself clearly. Each claim about Paris fell apart under scrutiny. The airport photo was taken in our local terminal's domestic wing. The cafe prices were in dollars. The timestamp on her Paris arrival post was hours before any international flights had even departed. The hotel manager returned with disappointing news. Without receipts proving ownership of the stolen items, the security footage might not be enough for police to act quickly. Family disputes, he explained apologetically, were considered civil matters unless there was clear evidence of criminal intent. Maya and Sarah formed an alliance, documenting every inconsistency in Eliza's social media. They discovered she'd unfriended all mutual connections except family members in the past hour, clearly trying to control her narrative. Sarah headed to her bank branch to check their security systems, while Maya continued her digital investigation. At the CVS where Eliza claimed to work, the manager confirmed what I'd suspected. Eliza had never been employed there. She had applied 3 months ago, but background check red flags had prevented her hiring. The manager mentioned quietly that Eliza's reference had called to warn them about theft from a previous employer. Instead of having another breakdown, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. I returned to the venue and began explaining the situation to key guests, asking them to watch for any sign of Eliza. My steady demeanor while describing the morning's events made Dominic tear up. He reached for my hand and I let him take it. With 3 hours until the ceremony, I faced a choice. Tell all 200 guests about the chaos or try to proceed normally while hunting for Eliza. Before I could decide, my Aunt Linda approached with urgent news. She'd seen Eliza at a convenience store an hour ago, purchasing hair dye and scissors. The escape plan had always been local, not international. In the venue bathroom, my mother finally broke down. Through tears, she admitted she'd always known Eliza lied, but couldn't stop loving her daughter. The confession that followed made my stomach drop. She'd given Eliza money that very morning, believing her daughter needed help with a rental car for her recovery meeting. My phone buzzed with another text from Eliza. She offered to return the dress if I would publicly admit to the family that I'd always been jealous and mentally unstable. The manipulation was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. Then my grandmother called. Eliza had just appeared at her house asking to store some boxes temporarily. She'd mentioned needing to finish something at the storage place first. My blood ran cold. Dad's storage unit, where we'd kept his belongings after the funeral. Sarah returned from the bank with explosive information. Their security footage showed Eliza attempting to access my safe deposit box with a forged power of attorney. The document was dated during what Eliza had been calling my mental health crisis last year. The timestamp on the footage proved the forgery. I'd been at work that day, not incapacitated as the document claimed. Uncle Jeff sheepishly admitted his police contacts had checked the airport. No one matching Eliza's description had gone through security. The Paris story was completely fabricated. My grandmother's text contained a crucial detail. Eliza had specifically mentioned Dad's storage unit, not just any storage facility. She was attempting to steal whatever remained of his estate. Despite the wedding starting in 2 hours, Maya insisted on driving me to the storage facility. She grabbed a baseball bat from her car, claiming it was only for flat tires, but her protective stance said otherwise. Her loyalty in that moment meant everything. During the drive, Dominic texted constantly. He was stalling guests with champagne and appetizers. His messages were full of reassurance. He'd marry me tomorrow, next week, whenever I was ready. He'd wait. At the storage facility, I resisted the urge to storm in. Instead, Maya distracted the office manager with questions about unit availability, while I slipped over to the security monitors. The screens showed exactly what I'd feared. Eliza in our father's unit, still wearing my wedding dress, sorting through boxes marked legal documents. She was recording herself on her phone, holding up papers, narrating about proof of what the family owed her. Her delusion was complete. I quickly photographed the monitor showing Eliza with a stolen dress and safe, creating time-stamped evidence of possession. The storage facility manager, recognizing me from my monthly visits to Dad's unit, noticed what I was doing. He admitted Eliza had tried to change the unit's access code earlier, but couldn't provide proper identification. My calm handling of the situation seemed to impress him. He offered to call the unit, claiming a maintenance emergency, forcing her to vacate immediately. On the monitor, we watched Eliza's panicked reaction to the call. She began shoving documents into bags frantically. Maya had already texted her boyfriend at a local pawn shop, warning him about incoming stolen jewelry and sending photos of my engagement ring. The network of support was growing. When Eliza exited the storage unit, I stood waiting in the hallway. Maya flanked me, bat casually held at her side. Other storage facility customers milled about, unconsciously forming an audience. I kept my voice level and calm. I told her the dress looked better on her anyway. She could keep it, but Dad's papers would stay where they belonged. Eliza's carefully maintained victim facade cracked. She couldn't play the wounded sister with so many witnesses present. The situation deteriorated further when my grandmother arrived, having followed Eliza from her house. My grandmother's revelation stunned everyone present. This wasn't Eliza's first time. She'd stolen from grandfather's estate too, but the family had covered it up to protect her future. The pattern spanned decades. Rather than deny it, Eliza shifted tactics. She claimed she deserved that money more than I deserved special treatment for anxiety. The mask had finally slipped completely. I made a calculated choice. I told Eliza she could keep the money and dress, but she had to return Dominic's grandmother's ring. The storage facility customers watched our exchange wearily, sensing the tension. My grandmother and Maya moved protectively closer as Eliza grew increasingly agitated. Her loss of control was visible in her shaking hands and darting eyes. Eliza tried claiming I'd invited her to take the items, but her story changed 3 times in rapid succession. First, I'd given permission, then I'd left them out for her, then I'd promised them to her years ago. The contradictions piled up in front of multiple witnesses. The pawn shop owner arrived just then. Eliza had sold the ring an hour ago, but he hadn't processed it yet. He was willing to return it, especially after she'd claimed it was from an abusive ex-boyfriend. Another lie exposed. My phone began buzzing with texts from family members. Cousins apologized for years of disbelief. One admitted Eliza had stolen from her too, but she'd stayed quiet to avoid family drama. The wall of silence was finally crumbling. The pawn shop owner provided a receipt with Eliza's signature and thumbprint, documenting that she'd knowingly sold stolen property. Evidence was mounting. With the wedding officially starting in 30 minutes, I faced another choice. Have Eliza arrested or let her go to salvage what remained of my wedding day. Dominic texted simply, "Whatever you choose, I'm here." Cornered and exposed, Eliza dropped all pretense. She snarled that I owed her for years of attention our parents had given to my anxiety treatment. The venom in her voice made nearby customers step back. The revelation hit me like a lightning bolt. This had never been about money. Eliza wanted to destroy the one thing she couldn't steal: my healthy relationship with someone who truly loved me. Instead of calling the police or engaging further, I made the choice that would haunt Eliza forever. I told her I forgave her, but she was no longer my sister. Then I turned and walked away. Her face crumbled at those words. The dismissal was worse than any arrest could have been. My grandmother stepped forward and demanded the return of our mother's engagement ring, which she'd given Eliza years ago. She declared it was meant for someone with honor. Eliza wordlessly removed it from her right hand. Maya drove me back to the venue while Eliza stood alone in the storage facility parking lot. No longer pursued, no longer family, just alone with her choices. With the ring retrieved and the dress written off as a loss, I headed back to prepare for whatever wedding we could salvage. I was still wearing my hotel robe over regular clothes, but somehow that didn't matter anymore. Eliza made one last desperate play. She texted Dominic, claiming I'd been messaging my ex-boyfriend, attaching screenshots of fabricated conversations. Her final manipulation attempt was so poorly executed. She'd gotten Dominic's name wrong in the fake messages. Dominic forwarded the text to me with a note that made me smile despite everything. Nice try. She even got my name wrong in the fake texts. Her last weapon had failed completely. Back at the venue, the staff revealed something that restored my faith in human intuition. They'd never believed Eliza's earlier call claiming I had died and the wedding was canceled. The wedding coordinator said brides typically didn't call to cancel their own funerals. Maya and the bridesmaids rallied around me. They gathered white tablecloths from the venue and created a makeshift wedding dress, securing it with their own jewelry and decorative pins. Their jokes about it being more unique anyway made me laugh for the first time all day. One bridesmaid with a significant social media following went live on Instagram explaining the truth. Within minutes, #SisterFromHell was trending locally. The public vindication felt hollow but necessary. Sarah used the venue's printer to create a timeline of Eliza's lies, complete with screenshots and timestamps. She distributed copies to the remaining family members who doubted the story. Even Uncle Jeff admitted he'd been wrong about this being a simple sisterly spat. As I prepared to walk down the aisle in my improvised tablecloth dress, my mother finally said the words I'd waited decades to hear. She apologized for failing to protect me from Eliza. The admission was painful but healing. During the ceremony delay, 3 more cousins approached with their own stories. Eliza had stolen from them over the years, but they'd remained silent to avoid family drama. The pattern of enabling was finally clear to everyone. During the ceremony delay, the storage facility manager arrived at the venue carrying a box from Dad's unit. Inside lay his handwritten will, explicitly leaving everything to me. The document was dated after Eliza's first theft from his estate. The will contained more than legal language. Dad had included a letter explaining he'd watched Eliza's behavior escalate over the years. He'd tried to protect my inheritance through proper channels, knowing the family would enable her otherwise. His apology for not acting sooner made my hands tremble. The entire family gathered around as I read Dad's words aloud. Their faces showed the dawning realization that their years of enabling had allowed Eliza to progress from childhood theft to attempting to destroy my marriage. The collective guilt was palpable. My phone buzzed with another notification. Eliza had posted a video claiming I'd planted evidence, and the family was ganging up on her mental health recovery. Her speech was erratic, eyes darting wildly. The unraveling was complete. The live stream backfired spectacularly when viewers noticed stolen items visible in her car's back seat. My distinctive wedding shoes, the ones with hand-sewn crystals, sat prominently on the passenger seat. Comments flooded in calling out the contradictions. Some distant relatives who hadn't witnessed the storage facility confrontation began texting, asking if they should hear Eliza's side. The family division made me pause. Could I really proceed with the wedding while opinions remained split? I stood alone in the makeshift bridal suite, staring at my shaking hands. The tablecloth dress hung on the door, a reminder of how thoroughly Eliza had disrupted everything. Would marrying Dominic today forever link our union to this trauma? My reflection in the mirror showed someone I barely recognized. Not the anxious girl Eliza had tormented, but a woman who'd faced down her abuser with witnesses present. The trembling in my hands wasn't anxiety anymore. It was adrenaline. I made my decision. I would walk down that aisle not as a victim but as a survivor. Eliza's poison wouldn't define this day. Love would. The wedding coordinator knocked softly, announcing it was time. As the music started, I spotted movement in the parking lot through the window. Eliza's car was circling the venue, unable to stay away, but unwilling to leave completely. I called security over and handed them Eliza's photo. My instructions were simple but firm. She could watch from the parking lot if she wanted. She could see what she'd never have. Someone who chose to stay despite the chaos. But she couldn't enter the building. Through the venue's floor-to-ceiling windows, guests began noticing Eliza in the parking lot. She was holding my original wedding dress up against herself, posing for no one. The final manipulation attempt was pathetic rather than threatening. My mother stood from her seat and walked toward the doors. I continued preparing, choosing not to watch what would happen next. This was her moment to decide which daughter she'd support. One by one, other family members followed. My grandmother moved with surprising speed. Aunts and uncles filed out silently. Even cousins who'd remained neutral began standing. Each person who walked outside returned within minutes. Their expressions resolved. No one spoke about what was said in that parking lot, but the message had clearly been delivered. When I finally walked down the aisle, I kept my eyes locked on Dominic. The parking lot windows remained in my peripheral vision, but I refused to look. This moment belonged to us, not her. During the ceremony, faint shouting erupted from outside. The musician, bless him, immediately launched into a louder piece on the piano. The notes drowned out whatever scene Eliza was creating. I didn't even flinch as Dominic slipped his grandmother's ring onto my finger. Maya leaned in close. Her whisper was brief but meaningful. Eliza drove away after the entire family told her she wasn't welcome. The unanimous rejection had finally broken through her delusions. My hands remained completely steady as we exchanged rings. The trembling that had defined my anxiety for decades was gone. Eliza's power over me had evaporated the moment I'd chosen to forgive, but not forget. Uncle Jeff discreetly spoke with venue security, ensuring they had Eliza's photo and car details. Any attempt to return would be met with immediate removal. The family's protection felt different now, active rather than enabling. The ceremony continued without further interruption. Dominic and I had written personal vows weeks ago, but they carried new weight now. His promise to choose me through chaos wasn't hypothetical anymore. We'd already survived it. My grandmother approached during the ring exchange with an unexpected gift. She removed her own wedding ring, worn for 60 years, and placed it on my right hand. Her words were simple but profound. This is for the family you are creating, not the one that failed to protect you. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. 3 generations of rings now adorned my hands. My engagement ring retrieved from the pawn shop, Dominic's grandmother's ring now my wedding band, and my grandmother's ring representing the family support I'd finally earned. During the reception, I learned something remarkable. While the ceremony proceeded, every single family member had independently blocked Eliza's phone number. No coordination, no group decision. Each person had simply decided they were done enabling her. The wedding photographer captured moments I'd treasure forever. Not just the ceremony, but the quiet strength in my mother's eyes when she returned from the parking lot. The protective semicircle my cousins formed during the reception. The way Uncle Jeff kept checking the parking lot windows. My improvised tablecloth dress photographed beautifully. The venue's soft lighting made the white fabric glow, while the borrowed jewelry from my bridesmaids created unique patterns. Several guests commented it looked intentionally bohemian rather than desperately improvised. The reception proceeded without any mention of the morning's chaos. Guests who'd witnessed the social media drama kept it to themselves. Those who hadn't remained blissfully unaware. The celebration focused entirely on our future, not Eliza's attempts to destroy it. During our first dance, I noticed my purse sitting on the bridal suite table. Inside, my anxiety medication remained untouched. The bottle I'd carried everywhere for years hadn't been opened once today. The realization made me smile against Dominic's shoulder. Sarah pulled me aside during the reception with news from her bank. They'd flagged Eliza's attempts to access my accounts and would be pursuing fraud charges independently. The paper trail she'd created in her desperation would have legal consequences I hadn't even pursued. My mother found Dad's letter in the box and read it privately in the corner. When she returned to the reception, her makeup was ruined, but her spine was straight. She hugged me properly for the first time in years. No words necessary. The tablecloth dress became a reception talking point. Guests who knew the story saw it as a symbol of resilience. Those who didn't simply complimented its uniqueness. Either way, it represented transformation rather than loss. As the night wound down, Dominic and I prepared for our honeymoon departure. The Paris tickets he'd surprised me with remained valid. Eliza's attempt to steal our destination had failed, just like everything else. My grandmother pulled me aside before we left. She revealed that Eliza had tried calling her during the reception, begging for another chance. My grandmother had simply hung up. The family's united front was holding. We drove to the airport in a car decorated by the wedding party. Maya had written "just married" on the windows, but added "and stronger than ever" underneath. The addition made me laugh through happy tears. At the airport, I felt a moment of anxiety passing through security. Would Eliza attempt some final disruption? But the TSA lines remained normal. Our flight departed on time, and Paris awaited without interference. 6 months later, I sat in our apartment looking through wedding photos. The tablecloth dress hung in our closet, preserved in a garment bag. Most brides save their dresses for sentimental reasons. I saved mine as proof of survival. My anxiety medication had expired and used. Dr. Kim and I had gradually reduced sessions from weekly to monthly check-ins. The trembling hands that had defined my childhood rarely appeared anymore. Eliza's attempts to reconnect came in predictable waves. First through fake social media accounts easily blocked. Then through flying monkeys, distant relatives she'd convinced to check on me. Each attempt met the same response: silence. The family's transformation held firm. Holiday gatherings proceeded without Eliza's presence or even mention. My mother had joined her own therapy program, working through decades of enabling behavior. Her growth was slow but genuine. The fraud investigation Sarah's bank initiated had expanded. Eliza's forged documents led to discoveries of other victims. The legal consequences I'd chosen not to pursue came anyway, through institutional channels. My wedding photos told two stories. The official one showed a glowing bride in an unconventional dress, but Maya's candid shots revealed the real narrative. Family members standing guard, security subtly checking the perimeter, a support system that had finally learned to protect instead of enable. Dominic and I had framed one particular photo for our living room. Not a posed shot, but a moment during our vows when my hands remained perfectly steady while slipping on his ring. The girl who'd shaken through every important moment had finally found her strength. The tablecloth dress became an unexpected conversation starter when new friends visited. The story behind it opened discussions about family dysfunction, enabling, and recovery. Several friends shared their own stories of toxic siblings and the difficult choice to cut contact. Our Paris honeymoon had been everything Eliza tried to steal and more. Walking through the same cafes she pretended to visit, I'd felt not victory but peace. Her shadow no longer followed me across oceans. The storage unit incident had one unexpected benefit. While securing Dad's documents, I discovered letters he'd written to me over the years, but never sent. Each one documented his pride in my resilience and his regret over Eliza's behavior. Those letters now lived in our safe, the one with a combination Eliza would never guess. Sometimes I wondered what became of her. The family grapevine occasionally carried rumors. She'd moved states. She'd found new victims. She'd tried rehabilitation again. I learned to let the wondering pass without investigation. My hands still shook occasionally during job interviews, first dates with couple friends, moments of normal stress. But the shaking no longer controlled me. It was just adrenaline now, not the anxiety that had once defined me. The most profound change was in family dynamics. Cousins who'd hidden their own losses to Eliza now spoke freely. The shame had shifted from victims to enablers. The family had finally learned that protecting someone from consequences wasn't love. Our apartment displayed 3 wedding photos prominently. The official portrait in our tablecloth creation, a candid shot of the family's protective circle, and one of Dominic and me laughing during the reception, oblivious to whatever drama might be occurring outside. The wedding dress itself had become something more than fabric and borrowed jewelry. When friends facing their own family crisis visited, I'd sometimes show it to them. Proof that beautiful things could emerge from the worst moments. Dominic never once brought up the moment I doubted him. The boarding passes to Paris remained in our memory box, a reminder of how Eliza had nearly succeeded in destroying trust. His patience in that moment had sealed our bond more than any vow. The family block on Eliza held firm. No dramatic confrontations, no heated arguments, just consistent, quiet boundaries. She'd become a ghost, someone who existed in memories, but not in present reality. My work as a pediatric nurse took on new meaning. When I encountered families enabling destructive behavior, I recognized the patterns without overstepping. I'd sometimes share resources about setting boundaries. The cycle didn't have to continue. The #SisterFromHell hashtag had faded from local social media within days. I was grateful for the brief support, but more grateful it hadn't exploded beyond our community. The last thing I needed was to become a cautionary tale for strangers. 1 year after the wedding, Mom showed me something she'd kept hidden. Photos of Eliza's childhood before the stealing began. A little girl who'd once been innocent. Mom wasn't excusing anything, just mourning the daughter she'd lost long before the wedding chaos. The storage facility manager still recognized me during my monthly visits to Dad's unit. He'd sometimes mention that day how impressed he'd been by my calm handling of the situation. I never corrected his perception that I'd been in control. My relationship with money had transformed. No longer did I hand over cash seeking love or approval. The $30,000 Eliza had stolen over the years became a lesson in boundaries rather than a source of shame. The pawn shop owner who'd returned my ring became an unexpected ally. He'd started sharing our story with customers attempting to sell suspicious items. Not all heroes wore capes. Some ran pawn shops with integrity. Dominic's family had embraced me completely after witnessing the wedding drama. His mother sometimes called just to check in. No agenda beyond caring. The contrast with my own family's historical dynamics was healing. The fake CVS badge remained in our important documents file. Evidence of Eliza's elaborate deceptions, but also proof of my ability to see through them. The trembling girl who'd believed every lie had grown into a woman who could spot manipulation. Our home became a haven for friends escaping their own toxic families during holidays. We'd host Friendsgiving dinners and Christmas Eve gatherings for those who needed alternative celebrations. The chosen family grew stronger than blood ties. Sometimes wedding guests still mentioned the tablecloth dress at social events. It had become legend in our social circle, shorthand for resilience and creative problem-solving. I'd smile and change the subject, preferring to focus on the present. The anxiety medication bottle sat in our medicine cabinet, expired, but kept as a reminder. From maximum dosage to none, the journey represented more than pharmaceutical progress. It was proof that healing was possible. Eliza's last known attempt to contact me came through a law firm, not for reconciliation, but for money, claiming emotional distress from family abandonment. The letter went unanswered. The firm eventually dropped her as a client when she couldn't pay their retainer. My hands remained steady as I signed our mortgage papers. Steady as I held friends. Steady as I lived the life Eliza had tried to steal. The trembling that had once defined me became just a memory. Like her. The wedding album told our story in carefully curated images. But the real story lived in the moments between photos. The family finally united in protection. The dress made of tablecloths and love. The choice to walk down the aisle anyway. 2 years later, the tablecloth dress still hung in our closet, not hidden in shame but displayed with pride. Sometimes I'd run my fingers over the makeshift seams, remembering the women who'd sewn it together in an act of defiance. The family continued to thrive without Eliza's chaos. Cousins felt safe bringing valuables to gatherings. Grandmother displayed her jewelry without fear. The constant vigilance we'd lived with had finally relaxed into normal family trust. My story became one I shared selectively, not for sympathy, but for solidarity with others trapped in toxic family dynamics. The message was always the same. Choosing yourself isn't selfish when someone else's sickness threatens your health. The Paris honeymoon photos sat beside our wedding album. The trip Eliza had tried to steal became ours alone. Every croissant eaten, every sunset watched, every moment belonged to us because we'd chosen each other over chaos. Dominic sometimes joked that our wedding had been a test run for marriage itself. If we could survive that day, we could survive anything. The laughter that followed always felt like victory. The family group chat, once poisoned by Eliza's lies, had become a source of genuine connection. Birthday wishes, baby announcements, and holiday planning filled the space where manipulation once lived. The healing happened in small daily choices. My wedding ring caught the light as I typed. 3 bands telling 3 stories. The engagement ring recovered from a pawn shop. The wedding band from Dominic's grandmother. The family ring from my own grandmother. Together, they represented love that couldn't be stolen. The trembling hands that had defined my childhood had transformed into steady ones that saved children's lives at work. Every four inserted, every comfort given, every medical crisis handled proved Eliza wrong. I wasn't too anxious to function. Our home displayed no photos from before the wedding day. The past remained in the past, acknowledged but not enshrined. The future we built together deserved center stage. Friends sometimes asked about wedding planning advice. I'd laugh and suggest having backup dresses, knowing they'd think I was joking. The real advice lived deeper. Surround yourself with people who'd help you fashion beauty from tablecloths if necessary. The investigation into Eliza's fraud had concluded with consequences I hadn't sought, but didn't prevent. Sometimes justice came through systems rather than personal vengeance. The distinction mattered for my own healing. My mother's journey continued parallel to mine. Her therapy had revealed generations of enabling patterns. Women who'd protected destructive children at everyone's expense. She'd chosen to break the cycle, even if it came decades late. The wedding venue had become a recommendation I gave freely, not just for their beautiful space, but for their staff who'd recognized manipulation and stood firm. They'd kept the wedding ready despite Eliza's calls, trusting their instincts over her lies. 3 years after the wedding, I rarely thought of Eliza unprompted. She'd become a footnote rather than a chapter, someone who'd shaped my past but held no claim on my future. The indifference felt healthier than anger. The tablecloth dress had inspired a friend facing her own wedding crisis. When her venue flooded the night before, she'd remembered my story and fashioned her own alternative. The ripple effects of resilience spread in unexpected ways. My hands remained steady through life's normal challenges. Job changes, health scares, the daily stresses that everyone faced. The anxiety disorder that had once consumed me became just one aspect of a complex, full life. The family's united front had created unexpected closeness. Cousins who'd barely spoken before the wedding now gathered regularly. The crisis had forced honesty that bred genuine connection. Sometimes trauma birthed beautiful things. Our wedding anniversary approached each year without dread. The day Eliza had tried to destroy became one we celebrated fully. The tablecloth dress came out of storage. Not to wear, but to remember. Survival deserved recognition. Dominic's trust in that hotel room had been the first victory of many. When I demanded he empty his suitcase, he'd complied without anger. When I doubted him, he'd stood firm. His actions that day had spoken louder than any vow. The ending I'd chosen, forgiveness without reconciliation, had proven sustainable. No dramatic confrontations, no revenge plots, just consistent boundaries held firm. Eliza had wanted drama. She'd received indifference instead. My childhood diary, the one Eliza had stolen and annotated, had been recovered from the storage unit. I'd burned it ceremonially, watching the violated pages turn to ash. The girl who'd written those fears had grown beyond them. The family learned to speak Eliza's name without flinching. She'd become part of our history, acknowledged but not empowered. The silence that had enabled her transformed into open discussion that prevented repetition. For years later, the wedding felt like a lifetime ago. The tablecloth dress remained preserved, but the woman who'd worn it had evolved beyond recognition. Strong, steady, surrounded by chosen family who'd proven their loyalty. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection and see my steady hands, my calm expression, my peaceful demeanor. The anxious girl Eliza had tormented was gone, replaced by someone she'd never recognized. That transformation was the ultimate victory. The family thrived in her absence. Holidays passed peacefully. Valuables remained secure. Trust rebuilt slowly but genuinely. We'd learned that protecting someone from consequences wasn't love. It was enabling destruction. My story ended not with revenge, but with indifference. Eliza had become irrelevant to my daily life, a historical figure rather than an active threat. The opposite of love wasn't hate. It was the absence of any feeling at all. The wedding photo showed a woman in a tablecloth dress marrying the man who'd stood by her through chaos. But they also showed something more. A family finally united in protection. Friends who'd created beauty from disaster. And hands that no longer shook. The trembling that had defined me for decades was gone. In its place stood steady hands that held my husband's. Steady hands that saved lives at work. Steady hands that had learned to protect what mattered. Eliza had stolen many things, but she'd never stolen my ability to grow beyond her reach. The tablecloth dress would always hang in our closet, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things came from the worst moments, and that choosing love over revenge was the victory Eliza never expected.